In this tutorial we'll be making a flying ghost. Ghosts are great fun, and making one in Blender is an excellent way to learn various techniques, including cloth simulation. Okay, let's get to it. We start with a new file from the File menu. Save the file to avoid losing any work. Delete the default cube by pressing X and confirming. The cursor should be in the center already. If you move it by mistake, reposition it with Shift-S, cursor to center. Switch to the Cycles render engine from the Render Engine menu. In the Render panel, we'll use the HD 720 preset for dimensions. For preview rendering, set scale to 50%. For maximum compatibility, change the frame rate to 30 FPS. Set output file type to a compressed video format. I'll use AVI JPEG, RGB, quality at 90%. For the output file destination, click the folder icon. I'm just going to enter the name directly in the field here. tutorialmovie.avi. Set render samples to 30, good enough for preview. Clamp direct to 4, indirect 3. In light paths, increase diffuse bounces to 8 and turn off refractive caustics. Set dither to 2. Next, let's set up a background for the scene. In the World panel, the world already has a material, so click Use Nodes. Click the right end of the color well for the pop-up menu and choose a sky texture. Rotate the ball for a weak twilight effect in the south. Like so. The rest of the default values are fine. Now select the lamp object in Outliner. In the lamp panel, click the Spot button. Set size to 2. Turn on multiple importance. Click Use Nodes and set strength to 4000 for a somewhat darker look. If you prefer a brighter look, set this to 5000. Set spot shape size to 15 and blend to 1. In 3D view, position the lamp by pressing N for the Properties panel. Then set location to X6, Y-12, Z9. We will make this spotlight follow the ghost. So add an empty object. And in Tool Shelf Options, set Z location to 2.2. In Outliner, rename it Focus. Select the lamp again, and in Constraints panel, add a Track 2 constraint. Set Target to the focus object, click the -Z axis option, and choose X from the Up menu. Now for the floor object. With the cursor in the center, press Shift-A, add a circle mesh object. In Tool Shelf Options, leave vertices at 32, set radius to 100, and fill type to triangle fan. Click the Smooth Shading button above. In Physics panel, click Collision. Default settings are fine. For an effect of distant hills, tab into Edit mode, switch to Face Selection mode, press A once or twice to select all, then press I and return to Inset Faces. Press S to scale, enter 0.9. Switch to Vertex Selection mode and select the outer ring of vertices with Alt-click. Press Space and type in Randomize. Enter 10 for the amount in Tool Shelf Options. Press G and move the vertices up slightly. Tab back to Object mode. Press Ctrl 2 on the keyboard, adding a level 2 subdivision modifier for a more rounded look. Let's create a material for this object. In Materials panel, click New, creating a diffuse material. Click the color and enter hex value 8C756D. Multiple importance can be turned off. Next, select the camera in Outliner. In Camera panel, set focal length to 30 and size to 32 if not set so already. In the Depth of Field pane, set focus to the focus object and aperture size to 0.03. This will soften the background nicely. Now animate the camera to move along with the ghost. At frame 1, set location in Properties panel to x minus 0.4, y minus 1.8, z2. Hover the mouse over the field, press I to set a keyframe. Set rotation to x 92, y 0, z minus 4. We don't need to animate rotation. Go to the end frame 250 and change location to x 0, y minus 8.5, z2. Hover mouse, press I for keyframe. Next we point the camera at the focus object, which will be parented by the ghost. In Constraints panel, add a Track 2 constraint. Set target to the focus object, click the -Z-axis button, choose Y from the up menu, and set influence to 0.3 for a gentle effect. We are now ready to work on the cloth. First, we'll use cloth simulation to create a basic ghost shape, quite low poly. So, add a grid mesh object from the Add menu. In Tool Shelf, set subdivisions to 24 by 24, leave radius at 1, set Z location to 2.7 to move the object up high enough from the ground. Press the period key on the numpad to zoom in. Tab into Edit mode and change to Edge Select mode. We want the cloth to retain sharp corners when subdivided. So select the edges at the very corner ends by clicking on one, then shift-clicking the rest. In Properties panel, set Mean Crease to 1. Tab back to Object mode. Let's create a material. In Materials panel, click New. Change to Mix Shader from the Surface pop-up menu. Select the Diffuse shader from the first shader pop-up menu. Set Roughness to 0.1. Set the second shader to Transparent from pop-up menu. Now we can animate the transparency of the ghost, letting it appear and disappear. So go to frame 1. Set Mix Factor in the material to 1 for full transparency. Hover the mouse over the factor field, press I on the keyboard for a keyframe. Go to the end frame 250. With factor still at 1, hover over the field, press I for keyframe. Go to frame 46. Set factor to 0, hover mouse, press I for keyframe. Go to frame 190, change factor to 0 again, hover, press I for keyframe. Now to the shaping of the cloth. We will drop it on 3 spheres, representing the head and hands of the ghost. First, let's set up the cloth dynamics. In Physics panel, click Cloth. Set Quality Steps to 20 for a more accurate effect. Set Structural to 30 to avoid an overly elastic cloth. Bending to 0.01, a low value needed for our low-resolution cloth. Cloth collision on, set Quality to 20 for accuracy. Set Distance to 0.001, again because of low resolution. Set Friction to 50 to prevent the cloth sliding off the spheres. Turn on self-collision and set quality to 10. Distance of 0.75 is fine. Finally, press Ctrl 2 on the keyboard to add a level 2 subdivision modifier. Now for the 3 spheres. Add an icosphere mesh object from the Add menu. In Tool Shelf, set its subdivisions to 4, size to 0.06, Z location to 2.5. In Physics panel, click the Collision button. Default settings are fine. Press numpad 1 for front view and numpad 5 for orthogonal projection. Press Z for wireframe shading. In Outliner, hide the camera by unchecking its eye icon. Duplicate the sphere with Shift D. In Properties, set location of the duplicate to x minus 0.65, y 0, z 2.6. Tab to Edit mode. Press A once or twice to select all, then press S to scale, enter 0.3. Tab back to Object mode. Press Shift D to duplicate again, then move the copy to x 0.65, the other side of the head. As the cloth falls on these spheres, we'll animate the hands to move down closer to the head for the correct ghost shape. So move to frame 30 and for each hand sphere, select it and press I for a location keyframe. Then move to frame 60 and select the left hand sphere. Set X location to minus 0.32, Z to 2.47. Press I and set a location keyframe. Select the right hand sphere, change X location to 0.32, Z to 2.47. Press I for location keyframe. Press Z for solid shading and numpad 5 for perspective projection. Select the grid object and move to frame 1. Now press play and watch the cloth fall into shape over the spheres. This will take a few minutes, a good time for a break. Okay, the simulation is done. Playing through again, the best frame on my machine is 238. The cloth is nice and relaxed, so I'll stop here. In Modifiers panel, click Apply for both cloth and subsurf modifiers. In Outliner, rename the object Ghost. We don't need the spheres anymore. Select them and press M, enter 3 to move them to layer 3 out of the way. With the basic ghost done, we can now parent the focus object to it. Select the focus object in Outliner first, then shift-click the ghost to also select it. Press Ctrl P and choose Object. We don't need to see the focus object, so click its eye icon in Outliner to hide it. Select the ghost again, we're going to shape its eyes and mouth. Return to frame 1. Tab into Edit mode and press numpad 1 for front view, numpad 5 for orthogonal projection. Change to Face Select mode and select eye and mouth polygons as shown. If you can't get a reasonably symmetrical look, you might need to run the simulation again with slightly different settings. Press X and delete the selected faces. Press Ctrl 2 on the keyboard to add a level 2 subdivision modifier. We're going to shape the 3 holes by moving vertices. Change to Vertex Select mode and change the pivot point to 3D cursor. Select the vertex to the left of the left eye, press Shift S and choose Cursor to Selection. Select the vertex opposite and press S to scale and move the vertex closer to the cursor for a more rounded look. Repeat on the right eye. As for the mouth, the bottom edge is fine, but the top should be more rounded and sloping. Select the 2 vertices in the center of the bottom edge. Press Shift S and set Cursor to Selected. Now select the top edge vertices, like so. Take care not to select any other vertices on the back of the object. Then press S to scale and move down a bit. Then shape the corner vertices some more by scaling. There, that's about right. Press Shift S and set Cursor to Center. Set pivot point to median. Now press A to deselect all. We're going to set up a vertex group for pinning of cloth simulation to Armature animation. Press Z for wireframe shading Then press Ctrl up arrow to enlarge the view. Press B to select top vertices of the head and hand parts as shown. This doesn't need to be exact. Now change to face selection, press Z for solid shading and tidy up the selection. Press Ctrl down arrow for regular view. In the Mesh Data panel, click the plus button for a new vertex group. Double-click the name and change it to Pinning. Press the Assign button. Now we're going to add weight painting for a smooth and gradual control. Choose weight painting from the pop-up menu in the header. In Tool Shelf, set Brush Radius to 50 and Strength to 0.1. The paint mode should be Add. Now paint the tops of the head and hands so there's nice gradation from red at the top across green to blue going down. If you make a mistake, temporarily switch to Subtract Painting mode to correct it. Add just a touch of weighting to the ghost's face to keep the shape in the simulation. Check the back and correct any unwanted painting there. OK, we're now ready to work on the armature. Switch back to Object Mode. Set Viewport Shading to Wireframe. Press Numpad 1 for Front View. Add an armature single bone object. Still in Object Mode, press G followed by Z, enter 1.5 to move the armature up. Tab to Edit Mode, press A once or twice to select the whole bone, and press S to scale, enter 0.35. Press G followed by Z, enter 0.43 to move the bone up to the head. With the bone selected, press Shift D to duplicate it, then move it to the hand on the left, like so. Press S to scale, enter 0.6. Then R to rotate, enter -12. To make the bones easier to see, in Armature Data panel, set Display Mode to Stick. Tab back to Object Mode, select the ghost, and in Modifiers panel, turn off visibility of subdivision by clicking its eye icon. In Outliner, select the armature again. Tab to Edit Mode. With the hand bone selected, shift-click the head bone, press Ctrl P and choose Keep Offset for the parenting. Click the hand bone again, duplicate it with Shift D and move the duplicate to the right hand. Press R to rotate, enter 24. That's the basic armature done. Now tab to Object Mode. Before posing the bones, let's parent the cloth to the armature. In Outliner, click to select the ghost first, then shift-click the armature. Press Ctrl P and choose With Automatic Weights. This automatically sets up bone weighting, separate from the weighting we painted earlier. Anyway, the bones will only affect pinned vertices, cloth simulation taking care of the rest. Next, the posing. Select the armature and switch to Pose mode from the pop-up menu. Still at frame 1, select one of the bones and press I, choose Whole Character from the menu. Move to frame 100, press I, choose Whole Character again. With the start and end frames of this action having the same pose, we'll be able to repeatedly cycle the action later. Now the intermediate poses. Go to frame 20. Select the head bone and set Y location in Properties to -0.12 to move the whole thing down. Move the hand bones roughly one diagonal grid square further down and to the side. Press I and set whole character keyframe. Move to frame 40. Select the head bone and set Y location to 0.1, moving up in the air. Select each hand bone in turn and move it up, slightly above the head and closer to it. The ghost is raising his arms. Press I for whole character keyframe. Move to frame 70. Select the head bone. Set Y location to -0.03. Move the hand bones down and slightly outward, as shown. Press I for whole character keyframe. We're done with posing, so return to object mode. We're now going to animate the armature as an object, setting keyframes for its location and rotation. This way we keep the general movement separate from the armature posing. Go to frame 1. Press I and choose Lock Rot to set keyframes for location and rotation. Go to frame 100 and set Y location to -3. Press I and set location rotation keyframe. This gives us a block of movement that will then be cycled through. Before we can set the interim location and rotation, we must change to linear interpolation for the movement along the y-axis. Go to Graph Editor, click the disclosure triangles to reveal the armature Y location channel and click it to select it. From the View menu, choose Only Selected Curve Keyframes. In the Graph view, press A once or twice to select both keyframes. From the Key menu, choose Linear Interpolation Mode. Press Shift-Ctrl-M and set a Cycles modifier. Press N for the Properties panel to see it. Set the Before option to No Cycles and After to Repeat with Offset. This way, the object will move continually forward. Now is a good time to set Cycles modifiers on the rest of the armature channels. Click the disclosure triangles to reveal all of them. However, as you can see, we're missing 2 bone channels. Go to Dope Sheet window and shift-click the other bones to select them. Return to Graph Editor. Now we have them all. Not all of the channels need the modifier. So in Lock Rot X location, press Shift-Ctrl-M, choose Cycles. Default settings are fine. Y location we've already done. Z location doesn't need it. Rotation channels, only the Y channel needs a Cycles modifier. For the bone objects, set the modifier for all channels except Scale, as shown. We must also change interpolation for the camera Y location. In Outliner, click the camera eye icon to unhide it. In Dope Sheet, select the camera Y location channel. In Graph Editor, click the keyframe on the first frame. Press V and choose Vector. This ensures the camera moves steadily until slowing down toward the last frame. Now we can continue with the interim keyframes for the armature. Select the armature object in Outliner, switch back to 3D view and go to frame 40. Change X location to 0.45. Change Y rotation to -9. Press I for location rotation keyframe. Go to frame 70. Change X location to -0.4 and Y rotation to 9. Press I for location rotation keyframe. Return to frame 1. Press numpad 0 to look through the camera and play the animation. Looks good. Finally, we set up cloth simulation again. Select the ghost object in Outliner. In Physics panel, click Cloth. Change Structural to 10. Turn on Pinning and select the Pinning Vertex group. In Cloth Collision, Self Collision on, change Quality to 2. One last thing. In Modifiers panel, click the up triangle of the cloth modifier twice to position it first in the stack, subdivision second, armature last. This modifier order produces the best flow in the animation. Change subdivisions to 1, we don't need 2. In Tool Shelf, click the Smooth Shading button. We're ready to render, so press Ctrl F12 and take a break. This will take a while. Press Ctrl F11 to play the rendered movie. And here it is again, looking like a proper spooky little ghost. Okay, that concludes this tutorial. I hope it's been useful. Do feel free to leave a comment and subscribe for future updates.